Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento. And if there's one trait, oh my gosh, that I think every single one of us needs in not only our entrepreneurial journeys, but in our life journeys, it is resilience. We need resilience in abundance. And fortunately, resilience is something that we can grow, something that we can gain, something that we can focus on and master. And that's why I'm so excited. It's probably the king of resilience himself. Not only are you going to love this guy's story personally, but you're going to love the story that he shares with so many other people to encourage them along in that path of resilience and so much more. So let me introduce you to today's guest. His name is Aaron. His nickname, Sergeant Q. His last name, Quinonez, is a Marine veteran, leadership speaker, and mental health advocate whose powerful story of transformation from homelessness to purpose-driven success inspires audiences across the nation. As the CEO of Sergeant Q LLC, he equips individuals and organizations with the tools to overcome challenges, strengthen their mindset, and lead with resilience. His mission is simple yet profound: to educate, empower, and encourage others to rise above their circumstances and unlock their potential. And if there's one thing I know about this guy, from all the research I've done, as well as talking to him off the air, it's that you're going to walk away from today's episode fired up to work not only on your business, but on your life. I'm particularly excited about this one, so I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with, I'm going to call him Sergeant Q. Dude, Aaron, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's really cool to connect with you in the pre-show and learn a little bit about what you're doing. It's really cool. Thanks for having me.
Heck yes, likewise, man. Well, I'm excited for you to get us all fired up today. So I'm going to kick the mic right back to you and ask you to take us beyond the bio. Who's Aaron? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I grew up in Northern California in the mountains. My parents were marijuana farmers. And so I grew up in a very rugged outlaw lifestyle. And as a kid, you don't really think much about that until you become an adult and you realize that not everybody else had that same life experience. And I was always a little bit held back by that because I didn't have the traditional childhood that other people had. And so I always didn't really understand, a lot of the concepts people were talking about when I got into high school. And then I joined the military and went in the Marine Corps. And that was the first time that I recognized that all of that hardship that I went through as a kid was actually paying off. Because when I'm in there and I'm in boot camp, I'm watching guys freak out because they've never had people yelling at them before. They've never had to be out in the cold, in the wet, struggling. And that was my whole life as a kid. And so that was the first time that I recognized, something is different here. Maybe these things that I thought were holding me back my whole life were actually the catalyst that's going to propel me farther into the future. And it absolutely did. Made it right through boot camp, Marine Corps training, went into my MOS school, and I got recruited to go to First Anglico. Now, Anglico is a small group of Marines. We're all forward observers. It's a special forces capable unit, so we call for fire, air, artillery, mortars, naval gunfire. We work with all the other branches and foreign militaries, putting what we call steel on target, calling for fire, telling the planes where to drop the bombs. And so for those of you who don't know what that looks like, when you've got that reporter on CNN and he's talking about, the war, and behind him you can see bombs kind of dropping in the background. There's a guy like me with a radio and a pair of binoculars, and we're telling him where to put those rounds. And so that's what I did in the Marine Corps. I did a tour in Iraq. And when I came back, man, I was really struggling with mental health. And I didn't understand it at all. Nobody had talked about mental health at all when I was a kid. And in the military, they don't really talk about it either. Now, this is 2004 when I came home, so I was there for that initial invasion for Operation Iraqi Freedom. And when I got back, I tried to get help at the VA, but the system was just terrible back then. It's gotten better now, but back then, I was one of the guys that fell through the cracks, and I ended up homeless living in my car. And I just remember thinking, how did I get here? How did I go from being one of these top tier operators to now living in my car, struggling with mental health, and starting to have suicidal ideations? And I was like, I don't know what is happening. What is going on? And I remember I was driving around the streets of the Pacific Northwest, and I was just wrecked with PTSD. So adrenaline, cortisol were just coursing through my veins. And I still remember it. It felt like hot fiberglass just pushing under my skin. And I was so burned out, and I just wanted to check out. I just wanted the pain to end. And so I remember I found this vacant parking lot, and I figured this is where I'm going to end my life. And I drove in, parked next to this 3-story brick building, and I rolled my window down because I just wanted to feel the breeze on my face one last time. And as the breeze came in, it brought with it something unexpected, which was the sound of children playing nearby. And I remember thinking, gosh, I'm going to wait until these kids take off because I don't want them to have to find me. So I sat there in my car, waiting and waiting and waiting. And the next thing I remember is waking up. I'd fallen asleep. And when I woke up, those suicidal ideations were gone, but I was shook. I didn't understand where those thoughts were coming from or if they were going to come back again. And I remember going to the library and reading these books and these medical journals about the brain and how it operates. It was the first time I started to take control of my mental health. A few days later, I get invited to go to church. And I was like, that's not for me. No thanks. But I ended up going that Sunday. I'm a little hungover, if I'm honest. And I remember driving right back into that very same parking lot that I was in just a few days before. It was the parking lot of Renton Christian Schools. And in the gymnasium, a small little church called New Life Church would meet every Sunday. And I tell you what, I was white knuckling it, driving back in because I didn't understand what was happening. I thought, did I die and I'm living some weird Groundhog's Day? I'm still struggling with mental health, PTSD, anxiety. But I go in and I listen to Pastor Troy speak for the first time. And he's talking about feeling lost and alone and without hope. And he said, all who are heavy laden to go and lay your burdens on Jesus. And I thought, well, that's what I need. And so I gave my life to the Lord that day. And naively, I thought, well, everything's going to change for me. But it didn't. But I knew something was there. So a pastor recommended I join a small group, just a small group of guys that were studying the Bible. And so I did that. 3 months turned into 3 years. And by reading the Bible and reading these medical journals, I realized they were saying the exact same thing. These stories that were written thousands of years ago in this collection, in this book, were being proven true by modern science. And I was blown away because I always thought that religion and science were at odds, but they're not. They actually come together really neatly. And so I built a little program for myself to overcome trauma. And by using that, I started a small janitorial company where I've been in business now 17 years. I've got over 150 employees, and we're in the top 2% of small businesses in America. So that's my intro. That's from the beginning to today. That's where I'm at.
Aaron, what an intro. I need to call this out because you're giving me goosebumps hearing these inflection points in your life story. And obviously we're here to talk about how it's impacted your business life, but I think that the two are completely interwoven. Business and life in business, they're all one and the same because it all comes back to us. But what I really hear in your story is, and I'm super appreciative and grateful for how transparently you share this stuff with others. You and I talked off the air. I'm going to share it with listeners about how much all of us, I mean, you clearly, it's in your mission. You want to help even more people. You already help a ton of people, Aaron, but I love seeing your business mind and how you ask, how can I help even more people? Like that is so core to your mission. But really what I hear in that moment that you take us back to of thinking to yourself, I don't want the kids to see this. I don't want the kids to experience this. I don't want the kids to find this. What my ears and my mind picks up on is that what got you out of that moment was caring for others and thinking about others. And especially when we talk about faith, really the benefit there, I'm getting goosebumps even as I'm talking to you about it, is the fact that it's a reminder that life is so much bigger than just us. None of us are here to be a one and only vessel of just living for ourselves. We are living for and with and serving others along the way. And so when I hear that, Aaron, this is going to be a weird philosophical question that I don't exactly know how to phrase it perfectly, but it's so interesting to me about your story, because just knowing how much of your work focuses on resilience, as much as I want to talk about, hey, we need to live for others, we need to think about others, it's also uniquely interesting because it starts within us. It is a unique journey for each and every one of us. And that's where resilience comes in, mental health, mindset, all of these things that you talk about. So at the same time, it's uniquely personal, but also universally true that we need to think about others. It's why we have these phrases in business of think about your why, know your why, always, serve through your why. So Aaron, it's a loaded question, quite philosophical, but how do we balance all this stuff? Because there is inner personal work that we need to do, but we need to do it thinking about way more than just ourselves.
That's a great question. I teach veterans. So when I built this program, I thought it was just going to be for me. I wasn't trying to help anybody else at the time. I was just trying to control my own mental health. And as I started to figure this out, God called me to help other veterans do the very same thing. So I started a nonprofit called Q Missions, and I didn't put a lot of thought into the name, guys, because I didn't think it was going to blow up to be what it was. I was just going to help a few guys. But I taught them the same thing that I learned, which is there's healing through serving God and serving others. And in the Bible, it says that. They asked Jesus, well, what's the greatest commandment? He said, to love God with all your heart, mind, body, and soul, and the others like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. And what I've learned is that when you help other people, you're building the 4 main brain chemicals you need to have a healthy brain: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. So dopamine you get when you accomplish a small goal. So when you help somebody do something, you're usually accomplishing a bunch of goals. So you're getting dopamine, which is your motivation chemical. Then you're getting oxytocin because they're going to be thankful. Typically there's a lot of hugs and they're very grateful. You're going to get oxytocin. Serotonin is released in your brain when you elevate your status in a group. So when people thank you, they're appreciative, that raises your serotonin, which makes you feel good. And then endorphins. Usually if you're helping somebody, you're exerting yourself physically, which can give you endorphins, or you're stepping out of your comfort zone, which will also give you endorphins. Endorphins is your natural painkiller, but your body doesn't just release those when you experience pain. It releases them in the anticipation of pain, which would be fear. So when you help others, when you step out of your comfort zone, you build dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. Those are the 4 chemicals you need to have a healthy brain. And that's where it starts, is helping other people. When I feel down, when I feel depressed, when I feel anxious, I go look for somebody to help because I know I need those 4 chemicals to counterbalance those negative emotions that I'm having. Now, that's not all that I do. There's a lot of other internal work that you have to do, understanding how the brain operates, what's an amygdala, what's the amygdala hijack, what is your anterior cingulate cortex, how does that work, what is your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, and how do I control it. But something that you can do easily without understanding any of that is go help somebody else be successful. And you'll start to build those 4 main brain chemicals, and you're like, oh man, this guy Q is right. I need to know more. And then I can share with people how the brain operates and how to take control of your mental health journey.
It's so interesting hearing you talk about this stuff, Aaron, because so often, and obviously as the host of this show for 1,300 plus episodes, I hear a lot of limiting beliefs from wantrepreneurs and entrepreneurs everywhere. I talk to so many amazing ones all over the world. We've got listeners in over 150 countries. And I always hear this limiting belief of, oh, well, I'm not resilient, or I don't have that in me, or I am a victim of this particular circumstance in my life. And so hearing you take that chemical approach of, hey, there's actually a formula. We can approach this to start to build these ingredients. It's just like if you and I want to build a house, we can look at an empty lot and say, well, there's nothing there. Well, yeah, go get some bricks, like go get some materials, and you can start to actually build that thing. What's your retort? What's your guidance for people who say, I'm not resilient? As if it's something that we're born with? How do you help people to, I would argue, and I guess this is really at the root of my question, I would argue that first it has to start with an identity change. So you have to stop telling yourself the story, I'm not resilient, before you can actually start building that house of resiliency. How do you walk people through that? Because it is a common limiting belief out there.
Well, so my approach is to help people understand how the brain actually processes information. And so when you understand how it works, you can work it a lot better. So think about it this way. If you were going to drive a car for the first time, you would want to understand how it operates. It would be beneficial to understand that when you push the gas pedal, it adds more fuel into your injectors, which makes the engine rev higher, which then turns the wheels faster. So understanding the dynamics of how it operates is going to make you a better driver because you understand how all these different components work together. It's the same thing with our brain. The unfortunate part is that there hasn't been a lot of good information on how the brain processes information. And part of the reason is because we haven't been able to see inside. But now, through advanced brain scan imaging, we can actually see that. We can actually see the different neurons firing off, what areas of the brain are working. And we all have in our brain this thing called the negative bias. And the negative bias is something that can control your whole day. It can control your whole life if we're not careful with it. So the negative bias is something that's great. God designed it as a survival mechanism for us to stay alive. And so if we go out and we're hunting and gathering berries and we eat these pink berries and we start to feel really, really sick and we get nauseated and we vomit, the next time we go out and we see those pink berries, we don't have to eat another one to feel sick. What's going to happen is we're going to see it and our brain's going to remember. And that part of our brain's going to fire off and say, nope, those are dangerous. And we will start to feel that sick feeling. Even though we haven't even touched the berry, we're going to start feeling sick all over again. It's the negative bias helping to keep us alive. Now, a more practical story would be alcohol. Now most of your listeners have probably had a few drinks, and some of them have probably had a few too many. And as I'm telling this story, you're probably thinking about the time that you drank too much of a specific alcohol. And my guess is that anytime that you smell that alcohol now, or you talk about that alcohol, or even right now, your stomach might feel a little bit upset. And you might start having some visceral reactions to just the thought of drinking that alcohol. That's the brain's negative bias working exactly the way that it's supposed to. Now, the other side of that is that if we have a negative experience with a friend, with a family member, or somebody says, hey, in grade school says, hey, you're stupid because you failed this test, or you had a parent that used to call you names or get picked on or bullied or say that you're fat, whatever that is, whatever that thing is that you were getting picked on that was holding you back, that's because the negative bias is helping you to avoid those things in the future. So anytime that something reminds you of that, or somebody says something that is critical of you, your brain takes that and categorizes it, because of the negative bias, into that negative thing. And so we avoid it. And that's where we need to learn to take control of those things. That's where resilience starts, right there, in that discomfort. When we feel uncomfortable, that is not when we feel discomfort, that's not a reason to run. That is a catalyst for growth. We need to say, hey, brain, I understand that in the past has caused me pain, but today I'm going to push through and see what's on the other side. That's how you build resilience. It's like going to the gym. The first time you go to the gym and you work out, man, your body is sore, it hurts, and you don't want to go back. And that pain will keep you from going back to the gym. But if you push through to the other side and you keep doing it day after day after day after day, if you choose the hard things and you do them, your body starts to build up resistance and resilience to lifting weights. It's the same thing with your brain. When you feel discomfort doing something, getting on stage, speaking in front of a group, sharing your ideas, starting a new business, hiring a new employee because the last one didn't work out and so now I don't want to do it. When you push through to the other side, you're building resilience. And you have a part of your brain called the ACC, which is the anterior cingulate cortex. And when you do hard things, when you seek them out, that area of the brain will grow, allowing you to do more and bigger hard things. And that's how you find success. It's not by playing small, it's by playing big. But you got to get there. And when they look at people who spent their life in the military, and when they look at professional athletes, this part of the brain is enormous, much bigger than the average person, because they spend their life doing hard things. They seek it out. And so if you really want to get over this mindset thing, you have to understand how the brain works. And why am I repeating these patterns that are negative and not beneficial to my life? It probably stems from a negative bias that your brain has been holding on to, that now your conscious mind, now that you're aware of this thing, you can now work to overcome it, setting small goals to push through to see what's on the other side.
Aaron, I have to say this to you while we're on the air together, because hearing the way that you tell stories, what I pick up on is that all of your stories are grounded in awareness. Every single one of your stories comes from the fact that you're paying attention. And that's really where I want to go with this part of the conversation, because it's something that stood out to me from the second our team came across your work and we reached out to invite you on the show. It's how intentional you are about this work. And I think about you have personally an amazing life story. From homelessness to the heights that you're experiencing today, to the impact and the legacy that you're building and that you're leaving behind one day. I think it's incredible, but it keeps coming back to that awareness and intentionality. And that's why I think about how many people out there are just going through life and business and whatever journey it is that they're on, and they're wondering, when's it going to change? They haven't put that flag yet in the ground of saying, today is the day. Oftentimes, I always joke this time of year, Aaron, that too many people wait for January 1st, and I'm just like, any day can be your January 1st. We get to pick our January 1sts in life. I'd love for you to share a little bit about how we can choose today being the day to take charge secretly as a podcast host. I hope that this episode is that January 1st for a lot of people, but I'd love your approach to this since you work with so many people.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I built something out for this, because this problem everybody deals with. And it's like, how do I get started? That's a big problem. And I call it the day one challenge. Originally, we were going to call it the 45-day challenge, because you need 45 days minimum to build a positive habit in your brain. So it takes 45 to 60 days, 45 days minimum of doing the same thing every day. But I changed the name to the day one challenge, because here's how I set it up. I set this thing up. It's fully automated. You can log in, and it gives you tasks to do every day. So during the first 20 minutes of the day, your brain's in alpha wave state. Alpha wave state is when your brain is the most malleable. It can take in the most information. And so we want to build positive dopamine habits early in the morning, so our brain is programmed to seek out hard things to get dopamine. Now, you can get dopamine from other things too. You can get dopamine through distraction, like your phone. Your phone will give you dopamine when you're scrolling, but that's negative. It's not going to help you long term. So with the day one challenge, we encourage people to do it first thing when they wake up in the morning. Get up and do these 3 tasks, and then you log them into the system, and you do a small study, and it's something about the brain. It's typically a superstar that we know, or somebody from history that we know, and I tell a story about who that person is. And so every day for 5 days, you're learning a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more about this person until the big reveal at the end. And so you're accomplishing small goals of getting up early, drinking water, praying in the morning, and learning something new about the brain. And so if you can do that for 45 days, it'll become a habit. But most people fail somewhere along the line, and that's totally fine. We want you to have 45 days of doing it consistently every single day. So when you fail, and everybody does, you just go back to day one and you start all over. Your 45 days start again. Nobody's ever done it in 45 days. It always takes 50, 60, 70, 80 days to have that 45 days of consistency. But what you're really doing is you're building resilience in your brain. Resilience to failure, because you're going to fail a lot, and that's fine. You're going to push through and get to the other side. And you're building resilience early in the morning. So you're programming your brain to be more resilient and do hard things every single day. So you're getting two really powerful tools for your brain that early in the morning. That's why we call it the day one challenge, because you could have 5, 6, 7 day ones before you get to the end. So that's one way that we help people overcome exactly what you were talking about. How do we start? How do we get started? You can get started today. Very, very simple. And you don't even need my system to do it. I'm going to tell you exactly what you can do right now. Pick 3 things to do early in the morning. 3 physical tasks that you have to do that do not revolve around your phone. The worst thing you can do is get on your phone and scroll TikTok or check email first 20 minutes of the day, because then your brain is going to be hyper-focused on stress or social media. So pick 3 things. Wake up, same time every single morning. So you're not going to roll around in bed and sleep in and hit the snooze button. You're going to physically get out of bed. Number 2, second goal, you're going to drink 8 ounces of water. Super easy. Third goal is you're going to spend time in prayer or meditation. And the 4th thing you're going to do, that I do, is I read the word. So I'll read some scripture and meditate on that. So those are the 3 to 4 things that you can do every single day. And if you do that for 45 days, I guarantee you, you're going to see improvements in your life. There's not one person that's ever done this that has ever come back and said, you know what, that didn't work for me.
I love that. Aaron, I frequently reference this Albert Einstein quote here on the air, and I feel like it's especially pertinent to the work that you do. And Albert Einstein once said, if you want to impress somebody, make it complicated. If you want to help somebody, make it simple. And what I really love about your approach is that it is simple. And to me, that is the most actionable stuff. And hearing you talk about the day one, it's such an important concept that I really want to echo for our listeners. I've talked about it on the air before, of the fact that we all struggle. I want to call myself out, Aaron, but I'm sure that you join me in this, and that all of us struggle. And you've called out, we're all going to fail, not just once, but we're all going to fail many times. And something that I remind myself of when I want to start to commit to something, whether it's working out, whether it's something business related, is I hear you say, oh, for 45 days, I'm going to do this. And I'm just like, I can't do 45 days today, but I can do today. And all I have to do is wake up tomorrow and agree with myself again. I can do today. I can just do this one day. And hopefully over time and with commitment, I can layer up to those 45 days. And I love the way you put it, that if you do mess up, that's okay. That is also part of the journey. Start back at 1. And every time I love this concept in entrepreneurship. You don't start from scratch. You start from experience. And how much better am I going to be going through your day 1 journey? How much better am I going to be the 6th time of doing it? I'm going to get used to where my failure points are. I'm going to get used to the feelings that I have along those failure points. So I really appreciate those insights. Gosh, I could talk to you all day, but I knew time would fly by. So I'm going to put you on the spot one last time with a super broad question that I ask of every guest. And that is, Aaron, with all of your experiences in life, in business, and literally everything, and in serving others, you know that we're talking to a very wide audience today of both wantrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. So my question to you is, what's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with? You've already dropped so many nuggets of knowledge on us today, but you're also a fellow entrepreneur. So with that entrepreneurial hat on, what's that one thing that you want to leave them with today?
Yeah, I own multiple businesses. So my janitorial company is my largest business, but I own multiple other companies. I started a new company last year that's in the Philippines. And so I've got 9 employees there, and they're not contract workers like everybody else does. They're actual employees. It's a business that operates there. And a lot of times people think like, oh, I can't do that. It's too hard. I do it anyway. And what I want to share with you guys is a story. And life is going to be hard. There are no easy days. The easy day was yesterday. And so we've got to do the hard things and push through. And so I'll leave you guys with this story of Samuel Whitmore. Samuel Whitmore was 70 years old when the Redcoats started marching to Lexington and Concord. Now, Samuel Whitmore had already fought 2 wars. He had traveled to the New World. He had built a life for himself as a pioneer, which was super hard back in the day. And at 70 years old, he watched the Redcoats start marching across his land to go attack his friends at Lexington and Concord. Now, it would have been really easy at 70 years old for Samuel to go back in his house, lock the door, and have a meal. But he didn't. He went back into his house, and he strapped on 2 pistols. His sword and grabbed his musket and loaded it. He made his way out to that field, crouched behind a low wall, and engaged the enemy. He took aim with that rifle and squeezed the trigger, dropping one redcoat. He ducked behind the wall and was able to reload, and in the confusion, he got off a second shot and took down a second enemy. That's when they recognized where he was, and they began to advance on his position. He didn't run. He instead drew both of those pistols and met him on the field of battle, blasting away, dropping two more. Out of ammo, he dropped his weapons and drew his sword and commenced a hand-to-hand combat with the redcoats. He was shot in the face and bayoneted 9 times and left for dead. Hours later, patriots on their way to Lexington and Concord would find Samuel Whitmore. And you know what he was doing? He was tucked behind that low wall, and he was reloading. Samuel Whitmore would go on to live 18 more years. That's a man with a giant anterior cingulate cortex. He'd spent his whole life overcoming adversity. So when this challenge came up, he didn't shrink in fear. He met it head on in the battlefield. And so for all of us, myself included, when we see those big things coming at us that are scary, that look overwhelming, we have to remember all of the things that we've already accomplished, all of the hardship we've already endured, and all the success that we've already created. And we need to meet whatever that challenge is headlong on the battlefield. But for us, it will be the battlefield of the mind.
Ooh, I love that. Aaron, I'm hoping that every listener is tuning into this episode first thing in the morning, because I don't know about all of them, but I am ready to proverbially go to war for myself, for my businesses, for the people that I want to serve. I knew that you'd leave us feeling fired up today, and I'm so grateful for the way that you show up. But I also know that listeners are going to want to go deeper into all of the amazing things that you're doing. So, Aaron, I'm going to kick it back to you, man. Drop some links on us for listeners who do want to go deeper. Where should they go from here?
Yeah, it's great. So there's lots of ways you can connect with me. The best way, if you want to learn more about this mental health program that I have, it's all going to be on an LMS system. It's coming the first of the year. So I'm looking for early adopters that say, yes, I want to try this new LMS system. It's an online learning platform. That you can go to thisistheway.com. So thisistheway.com. No, it's not from The Mandalorian. It's actually from Isaiah 50:21, where it says, you will hear a voice coming from behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. So that's where you can connect with me. There's a free quiz that you can go through that sees your level of burnout and then gives you some tools to be able to help. The other way you can connect with me, I'm all over social media. You can find me Sergeant Q, SGTQ. If you put that in the Google machine, you'll see tons of stuff about me. I've won multiple awards from the Department of Veterans Affairs. I was named Seattle's Hometown Hero. I work with the Seattle Seahawks in the Task Force 12, and I received the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. So all of that stuff will come up. You can find me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Also have a podcast called The Mental Health Janitors, where we help you clean up the mess in your head. It's me and another combat veteran. And so there's a lot of ways to find me and connect with me, but I am looking for early adopters who want to try out this LMS system first of the year. So if that's you, if this resonated with you today, let me know, and I'd love to get you connected to the online resources.
Yes, and huge kudos to you, Aaron, for getting that domain. It's not so easy to find amazing domains these days, but you have done it. And listeners, you already know the drill. We're dropping all of those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. We're linking to, if you want to be the first. Here's the thing, listeners, I know how many of you often wonder, how can I have such amazing fellow entrepreneurs in my network? You're hearing a very real way to get access to an incredibly abundant thinking entrepreneur. So check out that LMS link down below. Be one of the first just a few weeks from now. This year has absolutely flown by. So set yourself up for an amazing 2026. We're also linking to Aaron's podcast because trust me, you're going to want more of this guy and all of the brilliance that he shares with others. So definitely check out the links down below. We're also linking to his personal LinkedIn. If you just want to have an amazing entrepreneur in your network, reach out to him personally, continue the conversation. Do not be shy. Otherwise, Aaron, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Good luck out there, guys.